When this guy comes to, he has absolutely no clue where he is. But then it hits him. He's in the middle of a slave arena. His opponent is a massive psycho dude named Butcher, and the whole crowd is going wild for this bloodthirsty gladiator. Without wasting a second, Butcher looms over our guy with his giant hammer and swings with everything he's got. The whole arena roars, convinced it's all over. But when the dust settles, Butcher can't believe his eyes. Our MC is standing on top of his hammer, completely unharmed, and he's already charged his sword with magic. Before Butcher can even process it, he blitzes forward and ends it in one strike. Butcher's lifeless body drops behind him. Now the whole arena is chanting our guy's name, except for those rich spectators who'd bet their fortune on him losing. So who exactly is this guy, and how did such a skilled swordsman end up in a slave arena? When ruthless demons cornered humanity in El City at their last stronghold, they wiped everyone out one by one. Colin Hall stands as the last human alive, and he's been pushed to his absolute limit. After everything he's been through, he's fought as this world's strongest swordsman against these demons. And yet, now even that strength isn't enough to turn things around. The demon standing before him mocks him for still trying to fight, while he's the only one left. At the same time, in its own twisted way, it respects his efforts and decides to grant him the freedom to choose how he wants to die. When this exhausted man watches all his efforts crumble, his mind drifts back to the time when this whole nightmare began. It's been a year since demons suddenly invaded this world without warning because humans were weaker than them. The demons took over city after city without any trouble and reached the capital. The soldiers resisted as much as they could, but ordinary people without magic couldn't stand against these monsters who could openly use magic. Magic exists in this world, but the real problem has always been that it's reserved only for nobility. These nobles always saw themselves as humanity's saviors, yet their weak and incomplete magic training couldn't even hold up against lower level demons. Colin remembers that forbidden magic book he found, a book that gave anyone the power to use magic regardless of their status. Though he regrets it came into his hands too late, knowing that if he'd gotten it earlier, everything could have been completely different. As soon as the story cuts back to the present, the demon asks him again if he's decided how he wants to die. It casually suggests stuff like cutting off his limbs or burning him alive until nothing's left. But Colin refuses to bend even in this hopeless situation and tells the demon straight up to shut up. Then he makes one last desperate charge at the demon. But the demon stops his attack effortlessly like it's nothing. Colin quickly regains his balance and aims for the demon's chest, targeting the heart with precision, though the demon dodges in time and mocks him, saying ordinary swordsmanship stands no chance against it. But just as the demon is about to keep taunting him, it suddenly realizes that Colin somehow managed to hurt it. Colin admits that ordinary swordsmanship would be useless in a fight like this. It becomes clear that his sword isn't any ordinary weapon, but a forbidden blade that devours the user's life force as the price for its power. After saying this, the guy once again lunges at the demon and jumps straight into combat. He manages to fight that monster on equal terms, trading blows and clashing without backing down. The fight keeps going until he finally sees the opening he's been waiting for and in one clean strike cuts off the demon's hand. That moment instantly fills the monster with rage. The enraged demon mocks that forbidden blade and without hesitation grabs it with his bare hand. He tells the kid that if he'd used this technique as a surprise attack first, things might have been different. Then calls him unlucky for wasting his only chance and completely crushes the sword. Without giving him a moment to recover, the demon immediately blasts the swordsman with a fire spell. Colin hits the ground hard and grits his teeth in pain, realizing that even this wasn't enough to beat that demon. The demon immediately closes the distance again, grabs him by the collar, and effortlessly lifts him into the air. It mocks this loser for only cutting off one hand while losing everything in return. Standing at death's door, Colin apologizes for failing to keep his promise to his comrades. Then the demon strikes him again and his body gets drenched in blood. The dripping blood seeps into that forbidden book and something inside it finally activates. The MC finds himself alive once more and looks around in shock, asking where he is. Then he hears a strange voice and immediately turns to see what it is. There he finds the forbidden magic book talking directly to him. It tells the MC that his blood has awakened it, and as a favor, it will send him back through regression and give him a chance to do everything over. Hearing about regression, the MC clenches his fist because this is exactly what he's always wanted deep down. He calls it the biggest opportunity of his life, and without any hesitation accepts the offer. The book seems happy about this and tells the MC that it will stay with him and help him master the art of magic so he can achieve his goal and send the demons back where they came from. At that moment, countless pages fly out of the book and start swirling around him, while a mysterious figure appears before him. Then the book closes itself and that unknown figure is shown holding it in its hand. As soon as the regression process completes, the scene shifts to an arena, where the crowd is loudly chanting the name of someone called Bach. The MC looks around, clearly confused about why he's holding a sword and shield. As he tries to figure out what he's doing in a slave arena, it suddenly hits him that he's actually gone back to the past. The crowd's roar makes it clear that our MC has just survived the famous butcher's attack and somehow made it out alive. The owner of this slave arena, Viscount Thress, twirls his mustache as he looks down on these commoners. He sees them only as tools for his profit. To him, these people's only purpose is to entertain the rich, and he views them as pawns with no real value. As the fight heats up, the crowd keeps cheering for Butcher. While the Viscount watches with excitement, he's completely convinced everything is going according to his plan. And Colin was just easy bait for the show. But instead of getting crushed like he should have, our MC cleanly dodges the attack and stands firmly with one foot on the big man's weapon. Around this time, Colin had no choice but to fight as a slave gladiator. He'd been forced into the arena with no way out, but now something feels different and the guy realizes he can actually use magic. He starts wondering if the magic book merged with his body, and with this thought, he turns to face the fight. Taking the first real step toward changing his fate with just a few clean and simple moves, Colin advances and in one decisive strike separates Butcher's head from his massive body. He resolves in his mind that he will master the book's magic, knowing that this time he wants to save humanity from being wiped out by the demons. As he looks at the people who organized this whole slave fight, he quickly realizes that thinking about changing the future in his current situation seems like a joke. Understanding this, he decides to move forward step by step, and the first thing he needs to do is get into the Hall family, just like he did in his previous life, and become Colin Hall once again. Our MC then remembers that in his past life he was threatened and forced to deliberately lose this fight. Actually, commoners had bet on him, believing he could beat the nobles' champion, Butcher. But Viscount Thress had planned to use Colin only as a sacrificial pawn to entertain the nobles sitting above. The MC, on the other hand, plans to use this moment as an opportunity to draw the attention of Lord Marcurius Hall of Line Territory and quickly solidify his place in the family. Keeping this in mind, he openly mocks the management and calls them worthless, challenging them to send the next opponent. Meanwhile, Viscount Thress is getting chewed out badly by the nobles after Butcher's loss because he'd convinced them to place huge bets on the now dead fighter. The Viscount is struggling to keep his composure and trying to spin the situation like everything is still going according to his plan to calm down the angry nobles. On the other hand, Mark Darius shows clear interest in Colin and asks his butler Cornell for his opinion on the final strike. Cornell agrees that the slash was extremely powerful and by his experience, it was clearly above the expected level of an imperial soldier. Marky seems particularly intrigued that the boy had the guts to defy Viscount's orders without hesitation. Back with the Viscount, he's still struggling to handle the angry nobles and keeps trying to explain that the kid will be torn to pieces in the next round, though his weak words and forced confidence completely shatter. When Colin drops the next opponent before the guy can even properly step into the arena. When the nobles realize they've been misled, they explode with anger and the desperate count orders all gladiators to be released at the kid at once like wild animals. Cornell and Marcurius both watch with growing interest, clearly eager to see how the boy handles this situation. As more than 6 gladiators charge at him, Colin remembers that Marky once dreamed of a world where anyone could freely use magic. In his past life, he'd failed to fulfill that vision entrusted to him. But this time, he makes a firm promise to himself that no matter what, he will make it a reality. The guy understands that just beating a few gladiators won't be enough to earn him a place in Mark's family, so he calls out to them and tells them to all attack him at once. The gladiators immediately rush at him from every direction, trying to completely surround him. But Colin avoids every attack with precise movement and then leaps into the air, readying his blade for a counter. As soon as he lands, he immediately finishes off 3 opponents in one smooth motion by cutting their throats. Then he uses their own weapons against the rest and without slowing down, drops 2 more. After this, he focuses on the last standing gladiator and smoothly throws his blade forward. The sword flies straight through the man and into the crowd. Brushing the edge of the Count's hair, it embeds itself in the wall right behind him. Thress barely dodges this attack and breaks into a cold sweat. Humiliation is clearly written on his face, and his expression twists with anger. He silently vows that he will definitely make the kid pay for what just happened. Seeing this whole scene, Marky openly mocks Viscount for getting outplayed in his own setup. The other nobles immediately side with the Viscount and argue with Darius Hall, saying that such lowly slaves should never be allowed to act freely. Some of them even start demanding Colin's execution, which makes Marky's expression turn serious. The atmosphere gets tense when he strictly scolds them for still underestimating the lower class. This reaction further provokes Viscount and he openly challenges Marky, calling his ideals wrong. He reminds him that magic was given to humans by God 1,000 years ago, and that very event established the hierarchy where nobles were considered God's chosen representatives. Then he raises his staff, directs his magic toward Marky, and questions whether he truly wants to go against that system. Hearing this, Colin steps forward and intensifies this heated debate even more. He peacefully blinks and sits among the nobles as if he belongs there, which immediately causes chaos in the crowd, as everyone starts shouting and demanding the divine guards be called. Colin directly challenges Thress and points his sword at him, asking if he truly considers himself some agent of God. The challenge is accepted and both sides enter the arena. All the nobles are completely confident that Viscount will easily crush this so-called insect standing before him. They watch with satisfied smiles, while Darius clearly looks a bit tense. Viscount Thress makes the first move. Continuing his trash talk, he casts a wind magic spell. The moment the spell begins to form, Colin hears the magic book's voice inside his mind and a system panel appears before his eyes showing Thress's stats. According to what he sees, Viscount is actually just a beginner level mage who has more arrogance than real power. Thress unleashes his technique, Wind Edge, a spell designed to cut through everything in its path. The nobles start laughing and placing bets on how many pieces Colin's body will be split into. Some say 7, some say 8. Viscount proudly tells Marky to watch carefully and understand the difference between noble and slave, but Colin stays calm. His body is completely unaffected thanks to magic resistance. Unfortunately for Viscount, his powerful wind slashes only manage to destroy Colin's shirt. The attack passes harmlessly and Colin walks straight through it, reaching Thress, which leaves the spectators completely stunned. Viscount quickly tries to draw his blade, but before he can fully unsheath it, Colin strikes and knocks it from his hand, sending it flying away. Then he places his sword against the noble's throat and the fight ends right there. At that moment, the magic system activates again and tells the MC that a new type of magic has been detected. Shadow hands emerge from the ground and tightly grab the boy, binding him right there. This magic was cast by the divine guards who arrived after the report that a slave had insulted nobility. Their presence alone is overwhelming and they immediately announce that they've come to arrest the suspect. Seeing the divine guards, Colin realizes he's in big trouble. These guards are from the Magic Tower organization known for enforcing bloodline supremacy and strengthening noble dominance. The MC understands that these guards are elite nobles themselves and their strength far exceeds ordinary royalty. He quickly analyzes the binding magic and knows he can easily break it. But to avoid drawing attention, he doesn't do anything right away and acts like he can't get out of it. At the same time, he plays a big gamble and loudly declares that he is Marquis Darius Hall's son and orders them to remove the magic immediately. Hearing this, both the Divine Guards and Viscount are thrown into confusion. People around start whispering that they've never heard of Marquis having another son, but Colin stays focused, hoping his gamble will pay off. He knows Divine Guards usually don't lay hands on real nobility, and he's betting everything on this rule. Thress finds it unacceptable that someone would dirty the name of nobility like this and use it to save his own skin. As punishment, he immediately decides to deliver justice with his sword. Then suddenly, a powerful voice echoes through the entire arena. It's Lord Darius's voice, whose mere presence makes everyone freeze in place. Viscount humbly says he was merely ending the pathetic existence of a sinner. Suddenly, Marquis slaps Colin hard across the face and says it's disgusting that a mere slave would stain his noble family name. The Divine Guards are also shocked by this incident. For a moment, they thought he came to help. Thress feels like a fool, unable to understand what's happening before him. Marquis then grabs our boy in a tight chokehold and says hard labor in the merchant guild might bring him to his senses. Our protagonist stays silent, while Marquis' thick gloved hands tighten around his neck. Marquis Darius is angry that he first insulted Thress and then had the nerve to raise a sword against a noble. But Colin stays calm the entire time. Everything is playing out exactly as he planned. After that display, Marquis formally apologizes to Viscount Thress for his son's improper behavior. Thress's shrunken mind struggles to understand when exactly they became father and son. Colin comments sheepishly that he can't be blamed since Viscount had insulted his father first. Daddy Darius immediately orders his son to be quiet. Then he promises the Divine Guard that he will personally discipline his boy. He dismisses them, making it clear that their presence is no longer needed. Though Viscount has no intention of backing down, he won't let some Marquis snatch his number one slave with such a blatant move. With eyes full of blood and clear murderous intent, he declares that Colin will be finished by his own hands right now. He points his sword straight at the Lord of Line territory to prove he's completely serious. Our boy laughs when he sees the fool has checkmated himself. Thress has drawn his weapon against the Lord of Line territory. Oh, with this move, he's openly defied the Lord and the entire Divine Guard's decision. Colin tells that bag of bones that he's committed high treason in front of his whole audience. His sharp words stop Thress dead in his tracks, leaving the old man standing speechless in the middle of the arena. The broken noble trembles with fear in front of his crowd. He denies the accusation, but the Divine Guard captain has already made his call. The captain concludes this was all a huge misunderstanding and orders Colin's shackles removed. He even formally apologizes to save face. Then he turns to Thress and tells him he'll personally send a full report of everything that happened to the magic tower. Thress falls to his knees in terror of what's coming for him. Now his fate will be decided by the council. Our hero finally takes a slow breath of relief. Meanwhile, the Divine Guard captain is no fool. He quietly tells his men that this Colin is a suspicious person and they'll need to fully investigate his background. An innocent subordinate asks why they'd investigate Lord Darius' son. The captain firmly replies it's impossible that no one would recognize the son of the Marquis of Line territory. Clearly irritated by this fake claim, he's determined to prove the boy isn't Marquis' son. On the other hand, his subordinate finds it weird that Colin didn't crack under pressure. Even when he was bound, they suspect he has some special connection to Marquis that made him rush to save him so quickly, though the captain can't figure out every detail yet. He orders his men to keep a close eye on the suspect. Then the scene shifts to a carriage passing through a lush green forest. Inside, Marquis laughs his heart out at the brilliant performance Colin put on back then. After a brief silence, Colin expresses his genuine gratitude to Marquis for saving his life. Right after the duel, the Lord had sent his butler, Cornell, to buy Colin immediately, before anyone else could interfere. The Marquis then shows genuine interest in his abilities, asking if he has experience fighting on the front lines. His sharp eyes had already assessed that Colin's movements were far from ordinary. The smooth precision of his actions suggested either years of battlefield experience or training under a skilled warrior. Our hero lowers his gaze and gets lost in old memories. He explains that after his parents died, his own village sold him into slavery at a very young age. Years later, a kind noble bought him and taught him basic magic. That same man also taught him how to survive in real combat. Deep emotions flicker in his eyes when he says that noble gentleman was no less than a father to him. After the noble's death, that person passed on to him the dream he himself could never fulfill. Colin's eyes shine with firm resolve when he declares he'll do whatever it takes to fulfill that dream. He's even ready to give his life for it. His edgy determination completely stuns Lord Darius because he wasn't expecting such a powerful and honest answer. Marquis finds it even more interesting that Colin survived Viscount's Wind Edge relying only on his basic magic knowledge. The unbreakable spirit built from surviving years as a gladiator deeply impresses Darius. At that very moment, he starts seeing our hero as the one person worthy of his lifelong mission. The weight of that thought affects him so much that he goes quiet for a while. Finally, Cornell snaps him out of it, telling him they've reached their destination. Marquis Darius's mansion is a spectacular sight. This massive architectural masterpiece stands proudly amid a garden that only the richest nobles can own. As he steps out of the carriage, the Lord calmly tells Colin that he's now a free man. Though he belongs to no one now, this freedom doesn't free him from responsibility. They live in a cruel world where only the strong survive and every man has to carve out his own place. Turning around, Darius says in plain words that he won't babysit him anymore. From now on, it's up to Colin to prove whether he can survive this harsh life filled with discipline and hard work. Our boy stays calm and steady, unafraid of any challenge coming his way. Marquis Darius says he has high hopes for him. Formally addressing him as Colin Hall, he declares our hero his adopted son. With this announcement, the first phase of his homecoming is finally complete. In this world, nobles almost never marry below their rank. Status must match status. Otherwise, bloodlines get corrupted and a family's power weakens over time. The Hall family is particularly obsessed with maintaining the purity of their lineage. But one exception stands, Lord Darius Hall. Unlike everyone else, he doesn't buy into this noble nonsense. Mainly because he was born as a legitimate child to a maid. From day one, he was treated as inferior. Whispers followed him down every corridor. Yet instead of breaking, he crushed that discrimination through his abilities. Rising purely on merit, he reached the rank of Marquis of Line territory. As he walks with Colin through the Grand Hall, he calmly shares this belief. A man's background means nothing. Strength and competence are all that matter. He tells Colin clearly that he can give him fame, wealth, authority in society, or whatever he wants, but nothing comes for free. If Colin wants all this, he has to prove he has the talent worthy of it. With a proud smile, Darius advises him to put his heart and soul into everything he does. Hearing that he can have whatever he earns, Colin doesn't hesitate at all. He boldly asks if he can earn a noble title too. This question shakes both the Lord and his butler, who freeze for a moment. Even Darius Hall wasn't expecting ambition at this level. Then Marquis bursts into hearty laughter. Instead of being offended, he finds his straight talk amusing. With a warm smile, he challenges Colin. If he wants a title that badly, he's free to try and take it from him. This answer fits Colin's understanding perfectly. Darius puts merit above all. This belief in merit over blood is what sets him apart within the Hall family. It's also why he's deeply hated. Nepo baby heirs who rely only on their status can't stand that he keeps them away from power. That's why his biggest enemies aren't outsiders but members of his own household. Right at that moment, his oldest son Freed Hall and his second wife Katrina Williams step forward with big smiles, happily welcoming him. The Lord remarks that they hadn't sent any news of his return and laughs that hiding secrets from your own family is impossible. His wife jokingly says that whenever he passes through any city, news about him spreads on its own. She adds that a little bird told her about his little clash with Thress over a slave boy. Lord Darius Hall glares at her with cold contempt. In response, she gives a mischievous smile, like an innocent lady who did nothing wrong. Darius quietly looks at the servant serving her, snakes in disguise who report her every move from behind. Colin also stares at that woman, Darius's closest, but his biggest hidden enemy. In his past life, she was the very reason he failed in his lifelong mission. After dealing with her husband, he too fell victim to her schemes. She was the sole heir to her parents' title and vast wealth. That's why she has first wife level authority and influence, even though she's technically the Lord's second. Her ultimate goal is clear, to make her son Freed Hall the next head of House Hall. In his past life, she'd completely manipulated him, but this time he has no intention of letting history repeat itself. With burning confidence, he steps forward and says it's a true honor to meet Lady Katrina Hall and Big Brother Freed. Then, in a loud, proud voice, he introduces himself as Colin Hall. He swears he'll pour all his strength into making House Hall's influence even stronger. Hearing a commoner use the family name with such guts, Freed Hall is completely stunned. Just as he's about to humiliate Colin in front of everyone, his mother raises her hand and immediately silences him. The cunning lady decides to handle this herself. She expresses disgust that a pleb is polluting her noble family name. Lady Katrina turns to Cornell and asks if this new servant needs strict re-education in manners and respect. Cornell wisely stays silent, not wanting to upset either side. To everyone's surprise, our boy raises his sword blade high. He says this name suits him perfectly because it was given by the head of House Hall himself. He provokes them, asking if they want to directly oppose the Lord's decision. In a light mocking tone, he adds that they should remember his name well because one day he'll earn the Lord's title and leave them all far behind. Katrina's eyes narrow with contempt at a peasant having such nerve. Her son Friedel gets so angry he looks like he'll punch a wall. But for Lord Darius Hall, Colin's rebellious words are nothing short of music. The servants standing behind start whispering among themselves. To them, it's hilarious that an adopted slave would even think he could become head of the house. To stop the growing whispers, Lady Katrina clears her throat lightly. Within seconds, the entire chamber falls silent. She bites her lip in irritation and orders Colin to know his place and keep his worthless mouth shut in front of her. After this, Her Highness orders her servants to seize him immediately. The butlers draw their hidden swords and the maids ready their brooms to strike. Before things escalate, Lord Darius calls for a short timeout. He explains that Colin is telling the truth and if he proves his worth, he can earn the Lord's position. Freed asks confused what would this mean, but Lord Darius just answers with an angry glare. Lady Katrina says she has no objection to the Lord's decision, but she explains that there are many servants in Darius' house and only the most trustworthy are given a surname. In her eyes, it's absurd to give this name to an outsider. She adds that they can't accept this so easily. Lady Katrina proposes that the boy be tested so he can prove his worth, and if he fails, he'll have to leave the house according to family tradition. In response, our boy tells her that such things can't stop him. The noble lady angrily asks if he's backing out because he's scared of the challenge, but Colin explains that every servant should get the same test so everyone gets an equal chance to earn a surname. When he mocks Fretted, he also adds that this method of choosing the next lord would be way better than relying on nepotism and giving the title to someone without skill. Hearing this, Freyd feels humiliated for the first time. He goes into denial and wonders how the only son of the house could compete for the crown with common servants. Then suddenly, Katrina places her hand on her son's shoulder and reminds him that he's a noble who should stay calm. She tells him he doesn't need to fear people who know nothing because unlike them, he can use magic. She advises him to just observe for now and he silently agrees. Finally, Lord Darius accepts our boy's proposal and test one will happen in 1 month. It'll be open to all epicents of the house. Until then, Colin will work as a low-ranking servant and this is perfect for him because he can finally study the magic book in detail. As they walk through the corridor, Cornell tells our boy that he really knows how to use words. He explains that the Lord is always closely watched by other nobles because his thinking is different. He asks our boy if he truly worked for a noble before, because according to the slave guild, he was bought from a distant frontline village. Then Cornell pulls out a knife and places it against our boy's throat, asking if it's just a coincidence that he arrived here right when the Lord is searching for his next successor. Our boy stays calm and asks if Cornell is trying to accuse him of something. He then says the slave guild has absolutely no shame in lies and deception. They openly worked with a viscount against profit based on a match. He asks him if the guild would let him go so easily if he were truly working for someone. Still suspicious, the butler replies that the merchant described our boy as ordinary, but his movements show much higher level skill. In the Empire, there's a ranking system for both magic and swordsmanship. Most people only reach intermediate level. Very few among them go beyond. Nobles usually only focus on magic, so they remain inexperienced in swordsmanship. But elite groups like the Divine Guards demand high skill in both. Hearing this, Cornell thinks maybe the merchant deliberately gave him false info to quietly get rid of him. Colin replies that if he were truly a mole, he'd directly target the Lord's position. The butler asks what he means. Our boy explains that a mole's job is to infiltrate and exploit weaknesses. So if he were a spy, the butler's position would be much easier for him. From that role, he could easily get the Lord's secrets without raising suspicion. After this, our boy gives him a simple deal. He says he'll use his servant position to quietly find enemy spies, and in return, he wants Cornell to be his partner and fully cooperate. The butler asks if he understands that doing this could turn other nobles against him. Colin answers that if the risk is high, the reward is equally big. If Lord Darius fails because of him, the inheritance won't survive anyway. Hearing this, Cornell is satisfied and slowly removes his knife. The butler still wonders if this boy could really be this ambitious just for a title. He has to admit he's both strong and sharp-minded. In the end, the deal seems too good to be true to Cornell, so he suspects Colin is planning something. For now, setting those doubts aside, he tells our boy to come with him to his new home in the servant quarters. At the quarters, Cornell shows the MC around and tells him to pick whatever spot he likes. He explains that the madam has divided servants into 3 categories. The highest rank serves the madam, master, and their son directly, while middle rank is allowed to live inside the mansion with them. Lowest rank is kept in separate quarters and isn't even allowed near the mansion. The butler then tells him about his duties, which include chopping wood, throwing garbage, and taking care of horses. In exchange, he gets 3 copper coins daily. Before leaving, he also mentions the strict house rules, the most important being to completely obey all senior servants. The MC looks around and notices that many servants look more like thugs than workers, and he wonders if he really has to listen to these people. Cornell calmly explains that these rules were made by the madame herself. The MC accepts these terms without protest and greets the other servants, saying he's eager to work with them. But instead of normal responses, the servants start mocking him and sarcastically call him the future lord of the territory. One of them steps forward and says he already heard the boy had argued with the madam and her son. Another smirks and says they'll teach him the proper way to greet seniors. The situation turns ugly when one of them breaks a glass bottle to use as a weapon. He orders the MC to kneel down and says he'll slap his own face and repeat that he's eager to work with them until they're satisfied. The others start mocking him too. But the MC doesn't take this humiliation lightly. He grabs the thug's finger, and before the man can process anything, he's completely overpowered and thrown like a rag doll. The other servants are shocked when Colin kicks him away. They don't even understand what happened yet. Then the MC says in a calm voice that he won't back down now and starts slapping the thug while repeating the same line. The other servants get angry and rush at him with killing intent, but Colin reacts immediately. He spins his sword and strikes them in the face with the hilt, instantly stopping their charge. One of them steps back and sees that his buddy's tooth is broken, but before he can process anything, Colin has already moved again. He jumps forward and delivers a clean flying kick that sends the second thug flying far away without resistance. When the second thug comes to, he sees Colin already standing before him with a sword. The MC asks in a calm voice if he's satisfied now. The thug immediately says yes to save his life. But as soon as Colin turns around, he attacks again with the broken bottle and screams that he'll kill him. The very next moment, the whole scene flips. Colin stays right where he is, sword already ready, and he doesn't flinch at all while the thug is on the ground with both his hands cut off. The man screams in pain and terror, and Colin slowly puts his sword back and then asks again if he's satisfied now. Night falls, and the MC figures he's probably won Cornell's trust by now, though he still doesn't know what's coming next. Thinking this, he opens the magic book and starts learning magic to strengthen himself. Colin remembers from his past life that Countess Katrina had replaced all the Hall family servants after marrying Darius and spread her own people throughout the estate. Because of this, his and Darius's relationship deteriorated over time. while they never clicked from the start. To keep himself safe and keep tabs on the situation, Darius made his trusted friend Cornell his butler. Cornell is the only person with enough authority to remove the Countess if needed and also participate in the successor selection process. The MC remembers that in his past life, Cornell was brutally killed, and after that, Countess Katrina's influence grew massively, which let her successfully make her son the successor. He thinks that if the butler had survived, maybe everything would have been different. Colin then realizes that his current beginner-level magic resistance won't be enough to save him, so he needs to get stronger. He starts focusing on learning both defensive and offensive magic. Thinking this, he reaches toward the book and suddenly its pages burst out and start swirling around him like a terrifying hurricane. He feels like all the information inside the book is being violently crammed straight into his brain, and in one instant, he's filled with such pain that it completely paralyzes him like thousands of ants are biting his body all at once. The energy rushing through him becomes unbearable, like his blood, bones, and soul are drowning in molten magma. A figure dark as night emerges from inside the book and calls Colin's name. The very next moment, it appears behind him and whispers in his ear, "Destroy, fall, and surrender yourself." The MC struggles under this pressure and starts thinking, is this the real price of learning magic? He remembers a colleague from his past life who said that to learn magic, you just close your eyes and feel its flow. He thinks to himself how easy it must be to become a noble because they learn magic as naturally as breathing, and he clearly recognizes this huge gap created by bloodlines. Still, he forces himself to endure and places his hand on the book, declaring that he'll succeed no matter what. But just as he's about to finish his words, something suddenly grabs his attention and startles him, and the entire place echoes with a strange, creepy voice. The next morning, servants are already awake and busy with their daily routine. Then some thugs notice the MC has just woken up. One of them immediately mocks him, saying he looks pretty relaxed for someone who went to sleep after fighting with his seniors. The MC casually replies that he was fully expecting to be killed in his sleep by now. But apparently, that didn't happen either. Before they can react, he adds that even if they'd tried, it probably wouldn't have made a difference. He stretches a bit, taking a light yawn. He says last night's training completely wiped him out. He decides he'll eat before thinking about work. Then he almost casually says that grinding all night paid off and he's unlocked a special type of eternal magic. Before things escalate further, the scene shifts outside the residence, where a group of guards is forcing people to clear the way as they advance. Servants immediately bow their heads in fear as the entourage approaches and a guard shouts for everyone to clear the way for their one-eyed lieutenant. A servant standing ahead, carrying a bucket full of water, suddenly panics. He can't move aside in time, and a guard kicks him in the stomach, sending both him and his bucket flying far away. Water spills on the ground and splashes onto the lieutenant's boots too. The lieutenant stops and looks down at the stain. His aide immediately starts screaming at the servant, asking how he dared dirty their leader's shoes. The lieutenant raises his hand to signal him to shut up and slowly walks toward the trembling servant. The servant apologizes repeatedly, says he wasn't paying attention, and begs for mercy. The lieutenant says with a light smile that it can't be helped. For a moment, it seems like he's forgiving him, but the servant doesn't even get to breathe a sigh of relief before the lieutenant's face suddenly turns harsh. He says in a calm voice that eyes which can't even see their surroundings properly are useless, and with a swift move, he gouges out the servant's eye, leaving him screaming in pain as if the lieutenant is reliving his own one-eyed form. The other servants watch the screaming man with a mix of fear and pity, but the aide immediately screams at them, asks what they're looking at, and orders everyone to kneel. Right then, the MC walks past them without stopping, as if this whole scene has nothing to do with him at all. This carefree stride completely shocks the aide, who for a moment can't even figure out whether he should react or ignore it. The MC, lost in his own thoughts, is thinking about what he should eat for breakfast, because here, servants don't even get proper food. The thug who got hurt earlier immediately recognizes him and tells the lieutenant that this is the same kid who cut off his hands the other day. He also warns that the MC was muttering to himself all night, which makes him seem unstable. The lieutenant squints slightly and concludes that this boy is dangerously unpredictable in an uncertain way. He calls out to him. The MC finally stops and looks at him without any concern. In a flat voice, he asks if he wants his hands cut off too. The lieutenant licks blood from his fingers and says, "They're not soft like nobles or countesses' people." The other guards step forward and declare the strict rule of retaliation: an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Then they directly challenge the MC, asking if he'll cut off his own hands or if they'll do it for him. The MC stays calm, no change on his face, and he answers in a cold voice that they can choose for themselves whether they want to lose their hands or their head. But the lieutenant smiles and says he won't fight him himself. Instead, he brings forward a former slave arena champion and says this will be his opponent. Colin immediately recognizes him, a guard reserve and intermediate level servant named Daku. He breaks into a sweat because he never thought he'd meet his bestie in this condition. He remembers that before regression, he was his closest friend whom he could always trust. They did all kinds of work together, even fought shoulder to shoulder against monsters. Now that same person stands before him as an ordinary intermediate level servant, clearly looking like he's been badly beaten. As soon as our boy grips his sword, he tries to provoke him, asks if he really came to fight for a loser. Daku raises his sword and points it at Colin, saying he's just following the rule where every junior must obey their senior. Our boy questions this logic, asks if they're not even allowed to speak against this kind of treatment. His words stun the slave boy for a moment. Colin takes advantage of this tiny opening, snatches his sword, and blitzes forward to place the blade against the lieutenant's neck. His underlings are stunned by his speed. Even Daku stands there shocked, can't even process when his sword was taken. The lieutenant nearly pisses himself in fear, but somehow, composing himself, he asks if Colin knows who he's messing with. He reminds him that Lord Freed chose him himself and going against him will backfire badly. Without saying anything, Colin slowly pulls his sword back. Now feeling safe, the lieutenant straightens his collar and starts acting cocky again, saying this kid won't leave here unpunished. He orders his men to teach Daku a lesson. Without hesitation, the servants strike his back and blood starts flowing. He calls him worthless trash and orders his people to show no mercy at all. The minions keep mocking him and even stab a sword through his palm, saying this is his punishment because he's lost his last hope too. Seeing this, Colin's anger finally explodes and he immediately cuts down both those minions, separating their necks in one strike. Just as he turns his back to the lieutenant, this disgusting leader of the servants spots a small opening and immediately gets into attack position to take the boy's life in one strike. But his move proves clumsy, and before he can complete his strike, his sword is cleanly cut in two. Colin warns him that next time, it won't be his weapon but him that gets cut. Just as he raises his sword to strike again, Daku suddenly stops his attack. Daku stands before the lieutenant to protect him, staying put no matter what. He acts like a loyal guard and facing Colin, tells him to stop adding to his sins by disrespecting his seniors. Even though blood is still flowing from his stab wound, because he has no intention of fighting Daku, Colin lets the lieutenant go and tells all servants to leave the place. As his former friend calmly puts his sword back, Colin asks him why he doesn't turn around and fight, when he's clearly much stronger and could easily handle those weak opponents. Daku answers angrily that Colin has already made a fatal mistake by going against his senior, and because of that, he has no interest in talking to him further. When Daku saves the lieutenant, instead of thanking him or acknowledging his effort, the man turns on him and tries to force his head underwater. The lieutenant blames him for just standing there, doing nothing, which made him look like a fool in front of everyone. The poor boy apologizes, but is immediately slammed hard onto the ground. Then a servant asks the lieutenant if he's really going to let him go this easily. Hearing this, the man laughs and orders his subordinate to spread the rumor that the kid has declared war against all senior servants. After this, he orders that his position be stripped and he be sent to isolation. Colin asks Daku again why he's taking all this without answering back, but the poor guy just grits his teeth and stays silent. Later that day, during lunchtime, senior servants sit together enjoying a splendid meal. Meanwhile, an intermediate servant excitedly talks to her colleague about a dream where she got promoted and she can't even hide her joy at the thought. On the other side, low-rank servants are given just one bowl of soup instead of proper food. Still, none of them are seen complaining. Then our boy arrives and heads toward the counter to get something for himself. He looks around and asks why everyone's staring at him like that. The cook drops his soup and laughs, saying, "Those who don't work don't deserve to eat." But Colin takes this lightly and heads straight toward the senior servants section. He casually climbs into their dining area, which fills the senior slaves with anger because he pushes some of them aside without caring and moves forward. He reaches the proper meal section, where the whole buffet is laid out, and comfortably picks up a cross and a piece of chicken and starts eating. Butler Cornell steps forward and reminds him this place is only for high-ranking servants. Senior servants immediately demand that this outcast be severely punished, but instead of taking action against him, the head butler quickly makes up a sensible excuse to manage the situation. He explains that the boy just arrived and it's normal for newcomers to make mistakes. Then he asks Colin to come with him, while all senior servants look disappointed. As they walk, Cornell reminds him of the rule of absolute obedience towards seniors and asks why he's not following it. But Colin answers that the Marquis himself said rewards are given based on skill rather than rank. He adds that he feels he has enough talent to deserve proper food, so he just took it himself. After this, the butler offers to cover his living expenses, but in return, he wants our boy to find a spy hidden within the estate. Then the signal to start the hunt is given, and it seems Marky is heading toward the hunting grounds. Apparently, some strange activities have been spotted in the nearby deep dark forest, so the Lord has decided to investigate while hunting. As soon as Colin finishes his last bite, a slight smile appears on his face because he's already planned to go to that dark forest too. As the scene shifts, our boy has already reached the forest and is now hunting a red-eyed black deer. He fires several arrows at his target and finally successfully takes it down. After ending its life, he goes to the carcass and starts looking for the monster core. As soon as he holds the purple-colored core in his hand, he remembers that these are often treated as luxury items and usually processed into necklaces and other ornaments. But based on what he's learned from the Forbidden Magic book, he understands that he can use it to make potions that help recover mana and strengthen his body. According to his understanding, the core's properties change based on the rank and type of monster it comes from, because the deer he just defeated was a low-rank creature, so the core he got is the lowest grade. Then the story goes back to when Colin was walking with Cornell. Our boy had asked for permission to go to the hunting grounds. Normally, only royalty is allowed there, but due to the current abnormal situation, only divine guards or some authorized people can enter that area. Colin still insists on going and suggests he can join the divine guards, which somehow works in his favor. As he continues the work of extracting the core from the monster, Daku suddenly shows up, clearly angry, and scolds him for working on his own. He reminds him that only nobles and at least middle-class servants are allowed to hunt here, and if he's caught, he'll face serious consequences. Colin acts like he doesn't care at all, and without asking, picks up Daku's sword. He plunges that blade into the dead monster and claims that now this hunt is Daku's. And because Daku is a middle-class servant, there shouldn't be any problem now. At this idiotic reasoning, Daku immediately loses his temper and regrets why he ever got involved with this low-class servant who keeps making his life harder. When he asks why Cornell gave Colin permission to come, our boy pulls out the head butler's dagger and, showing it, says he's been given a mission and this dagger is his proof. He further explains that both of them are expected to help with the investigation, and while doing so, they should bring back some good food. Daku kneels beside the monster's carcass and looks at our boy, thinking how unlucky he got to be paired with him. He lets out a sigh, and as he looks down again, he realizes the meat has already disappeared. Actually, the outcast had started roasting the meat in a flash and even calls Daku to eat with him. Daku immediately panics and quickly asks what he's doing. There's not a trace of guilt on Colin's face, which gets him scolded because Daku reminds him that this meat is supposed to be handed over to the Lord and their seniors. Our hero argues that there's plenty of meat and asks him to sit and eat together. At first, the poor servant tries to object, but when Colin reminds him that he only gets to eat once every 3 days, and if he gets punished, he might not even get food later, Daku finally gives in. Unable to resist the smell of cooked meat and the sight before him, he quickly starts eating like a starving man. While he's eating, Colin asks him again why he's so obsessed with blindly following his senior's orders when he's stronger than them. The servant answers that strength has nothing to do with it and repeats his belief that nobles were chosen as God's agents and given divine power. He adds that if he keeps working hard and stays obedient, maybe one day he'll be reborn as a noble and receive that same divine blessing. He explains how hard he worked to become a middle-class servant. Also, his sister living far away could be proud of him. He tells Colin to stay out of his business and stop interfering in his life. He goes on to say that he's already lucky to be a servant and they should just follow their given duties without question. After this, Colin asks him if all this is just because he wants the ability to use a little bit of magic. Hearing this, the servant challenges him and says if he can, he should show him by learning even one spell. In response, Colin turns to him and asks what he'll do if he really teaches him how to use magic. This completely stuns the man, and he immediately asks if our boy can actually use magic. Before our protagonist can answer, both of them are startled by a sudden scream of pain coming from the nearby area. They immediately realize it's from the knights investigating the deep dark forest. One of them gets brutally bitten on the shoulder by a massive magic beast. Their leader orders his men to hold formation and keep a calm mind when suddenly facing danger, but he himself realizes his words aren't enough, especially when his men are being torn apart by the beast one by one without any mercy. A magic beast lunges at him and he braces his sword and shield against its sharp fangs. In his long career, he never thought a pack of ordinary wild dogs would give him this much trouble. He puts more power into his blade and in one strike tears the beast's jaws apart. He throws its corpse far away. Then suddenly, his subordinate warns him that 3 more are rapidly approaching from behind. Realizing he's now completely trapped, the leader stands silently, waiting for his bad end. Right at that moment, 3 arrows suddenly embed themselves in those 3 beasts' jugulars, seriously wounding them and making them stumble. The heroes who came to save them step forward and calmly ask if they're safe now. Our boy carefully looks at those beasts and remembers they're called azure flames because of their burning manes and tails. This beast's meat and bones are so valuable that after killing one, you can live comfortably for many days. But his real target is that monster's glowing, powerful core. So he carefully takes aim, deciding that tonight he won't let even one escape. Colin leaps high and presents himself as easy prey for the magic beast below. Seeing this careless move, the knight's leader thinks he's a fool, walking straight into a lion's mouth. But here the situation is completely reversed. Our hero is the real hunter who sees these dogs as a weak, forced pack that has to hunt together. He fires precise arrows into 3 heads and lands easily. Taking this as an opportunity, one magic beast tries to attack him from behind. As if time has slowed for him, our boy calmly and precisely leans back to dodge it and then delivers a powerful kick to its gut, finishing it right where it came from. All the knights are stunned, watching him toss it around like a small puppy. With his usual cool head, Colin fires one last arrow into its chest and completely finishes it off. Immediately after this, even more magic beasts emerge from the dark forest, but this proves to be their fatal mistake because he rains arrows down on them and finishes all of them right there. The leader can't believe his overwhelming combat skills. He can't trust his own eyes that a lone warrior could kill more beasts than his entire squad. Suddenly, our boy senses an extremely dangerous and powerful energy coming his way. He leaps away at the right moment because a massive blazing azure flames pillar crashes right where he was standing. It came from a beast that looked different and much bigger than the rest. As soon as he sees blue glowing sparks forming inside its mouth, he understands what's about to happen. As soon as it opens its massive jaws, 3 burning blue spheres come flying rapidly toward him, and like an experienced hunter, he weaves between them while firing 3 swift arrows back. To quickly end that poor beast's suffering, he delivers a powerful heel strike to its head. The force of his kick is so devastating that the beast's head sinks into the ground, like a scared ostrich. Right at that moment, an arrow passes by his face, reminding him that he's still surrounded by people who aren't his real allies. It turns out the attack was actually on a beast he knew nothing about. Daku, who had quietly approached from behind, immediately warns him that during a chaotic fight, he should never let his guard down. My boy quickly gives him a thumbs up in appreciation. Meanwhile, on the other side, Daku lets out an irritated sigh, like a classic sidekick. Impressed, Captain Glenn genuinely wants to know which lord such skilled warriors are working for. Before Colin can mess up the introduction again, Daku smoothly introduces himself and his friend as backup divine guards and a low-rank servant, who were sent by Marquis Darius's butler Cornell for support. Hearing about this weird partnership of our dynamic duo, Glenn is completely stunned because they were saved by a reserve guard and a low-ranking servant. The royal guards clearly show disgust. The lady asks what Cornell was thinking when he sent that old woman's servants to help them. At the same time, another guard mutters that being saved by low-ranking amateurs is shameful. Hearing this, innocent Daku still can't understand who they're calling old woman. Meanwhile, Colin uses this break to collect magic cores from the fallen monsters. He finally gets a mid-rank core which he can later use to make potions by following the instructions written in the magic book. Then a big knight suddenly screams at him and asks who gave him permission to touch the monsters. His captain Glenn steps in and says they should stay focused on the mission given by Lord Darius and leave the dead bodies for Colin. Our boy asks the big man who he's calling a brat and reminds him that he was the one who saved them. He also adds that only a brick-headed idiot would talk so rudely to someone who just helped them. Angered by that response, the man steps forward to attack him, but both the girl and Captain Glenn immediately tell him to calm down. They call him Marvin, and as soon as our boy hears that name, old memories from his past life surface. Back then, besides Cornell, Glenn, Marvin, and Syra were the only people Lord Darius truly trusted. In his past life, these 3 had died during a mission in Gloom Deep Forest. After that loss, Lord Darius gradually lost his power. Our hero never thought that this time he'd be the one to change their fate. Because of that memory, he quietly decides that he won't let anything happen to them again. Seeing the tension rise, Daku quickly apologizes on his partner's behalf and explains that he's new here and unfamiliar with the rules. He requests them not to take his sharp words too seriously. Syra says that Wrinkly Hack should just shut up again. Daku gets genuinely confused because he can't understand her weird and specific insult. Glenn asks Colin if he's the newbie who arrogantly said he'd become the next lord. He admits he's strong, but if he pursues ideals far bigger than his position, he'll definitely regret it in the future. Before leaving, Captain Glenn thanks our boy for saving them and apologizes because they have a mission to complete. Then suddenly, a loud roar is heard that startles everyone. Out of nowhere, a pack of azure flames and its mega evolution version appears before them. Seeing that joint magic beast, all three freeze in place and Syra screams that it's the Azure King. The Azure King stuns them completely with its massive size and glowing blue burning flame. It roars so hard that everyone starts trembling with fear. Then it attacks using its claws, but they're all so slow they can't even lift a finger, let alone react. Captain Glenn's whole life flashes before his eyes and he closes them, thinking his squad is about to die. When they open their eyes again, they see something they can't believe. A low-ranking servant who shouldn't have any combat skills had blocked the Azure King's attack. Captain Glenn asks him who he actually is, and in his aura, farmer style, Colin answers that he's the same hero who saved them for the second time in one day. As simple attacks have no effect on the Azure King, our boy steps forward and uses his special move, Mountain Crusher, on that joint wolf. But the attack is quite shallow and can't do any real damage on the elite mob's hard hide. Immediately after, the wolf counterattacks. He tries to block it, but can't fully absorb the impact. The result is that his sword breaks and he goes flying backward. After this hit, he realizes that in his current condition, he can't beat this monster. A normal sword like his is barely doing any damage to it. Seeing this, all three royal guards immediately step forward to cover him, and Sarah asks if he's okay. Captain Glenn tells everyone that the Azure King is a high-level monster that has already killed many elite soldiers. Then the Azure King orders its underlings to surround the party and attack from all sides. At this point, Marvin panics and starts thinking, what now? These side mobs were already hard enough to handle, and now the king is here too. Our boy calmly says they shouldn't focus on the small monsters because they have no real intelligence. They just act like the king's puppets. They only need to deal with the king. The rest will fall on their own. Captain Glenn finds it hard to believe what he's saying. On the other hand, Daku says this monster has killed many elite guards, so their chances of winning are very low. He asks how he's planning to win with a broken sword. As confident as ever, Colin just says they should at least try, which makes Daku think he's lost his mind. Still, Captain Glenn agrees with this plan and says they can only survive if they fight as one unit. Meanwhile, Syra says reaching the king through the underlings' protection won't be easy. In response, our boy assures her there's nothing to worry about. An opening will form soon. Right then, the Azure King roars loudly and its puppets rush to attack. Colin calmly tells everyone to stay composed and let the enemies come close. Marvin immediately screams at him, asking who gave him the right to give orders. Surprisingly, Captain Glenn steps in and says this isn't the time to fight among themselves. He orders his men to follow our hero's words. Before advancing, Colin tells Daku that if he wants to become a proud big brother for his sister, he should trust him. Then Captain Glenn shouts that the enemy has reached them. Still, he says they need to wait and let the distance close. When the enemies come within arm's length, he finally gives the attack signal. First, he tells Captain Glenn to use his holy protection to blind the enemies, then orders Marvin to push them back with Heaven Shaker, and finally tells Syra to make a path with her Phantom Blade. Following his commands, everyone plays their role and a clear path opens through the enemy line. The captain thinks while fighting, how can someone be so familiar with so many sword arts and weapon styles? As soon as the opening forms, our boy immediately tells Daku to get behind him. Syra motivates him in her own style, warning him as little doggy not to mess up this time. Poor Daku is still confused why she keeps calling him that. Taking advantage of the opening, Colin and Daku rapidly advance toward the king. On the way, Daku asks him what he's going to do. He explains that everyone fears the Azure King, and if they attack it directly without intimidation, that noble creature will freeze up and won't be able to react. Daku still doesn't fully understand his logic and asks how he'll attack the king with a broken sword. In response, our boy asks him if he can think of any other way to attack someone without a sword. Daku remembers the moment when he was told that Colin can use magic. Now he starts wondering if this rascal can really pull it off and beat the king. The very next moment, Colin manifests a mana line from his hands that activates the magic flow throughout his entire body at full capacity. Pushing his mana to the limit, he unleashes a powerful move, Ice Lotus. Without any restriction, countless ice shards start showering down on the Azure King, and Daku can't believe what's happening before his eyes. The monster endures this assault. Then Daku leaps forward and lands on its head, plunging his sword with full force into its skull. Our hero reinforces that strike with his eternal magic, and the very next moment, the monster collapses. Where it stood, a beam of light rises. As it falls, all the small azure flame wolves panic and flee into the forest. Daku still can't process what just happened. He looks at the battlefield in disbelief, where after such an intense clash, silence now prevails. The royal guards immediately step forward and ask if everyone's okay after the fight is over. Captain Glenn observes that the Azure Flame Wolves have fled because their leader was defeated. Meanwhile, Marvin asks how they took down such a big monster without any backup. Colin answers that the plan only succeeded because of their support and admits he can't predict what the result would have been without them. Syra carefully examines an ice shard and starts getting suspicious about our hero's real abilities. Marvin says this kid reminds him of the captain's younger days, which confuses Daku about who this former captain is. Marvin explains that Marcus Darius Hall was once their leader, and Syra adds that they all served under him in the Lionheart Brigade. She further explains that after the brigade disbanded, the remaining members became royal guards. Then she sarcastically says the old lady's dog doesn't even know this basic information, which makes Daku's anger explode. He directly confronts her and says to stop calling him the old lady's dog. His name is Daku, and he's proud of it. He demands she engrave his name in her memory, and without hesitation answers by calling her Old Hag. Hearing this, Syra takes a deep hit and goes quiet for a few moments, while Marvin awkwardly explains that she calls the Countess Old Lady. Hearing this, Daku is shocked, but before he can think anything else, Syra suddenly appears before him and asks why he thinks she's old. She argues that she's still in her prime youthful beauty, no matter what anyone says, but Daku refuses to back down and insists her prime has already passed. He calls her out for denying reality, and she immediately mercilessly puts him in a chokehold. Our hero briefly remembers a moment from his past life when Daku and others used to joke around like this. But this memory quickly fades because the sound of approaching horses interrupts his thoughts. Young Master Freed arrives at the scene and everyone is shocked by his presence. All immediately bow in respect, and he explains that he came here from camp as soon as he heard about the disturbance. He looks around at the fallen Azure Flame Wolves and asks what exactly happened here. Captain Glenn explains that they went inside Gloomwood Forest for investigation. Then the pack suddenly attacked them without warning. He adds that if Colin and Daku hadn't arrived at the right time, they wouldn't have survived this encounter. Freed directs his attention to our hero, who, without caring about anything else, is busy collecting monster cores. He thinks what kind of person is even doing this here. Captain Glenn says both have remarkable potential and requests permission to take them to camp to report their achievements. Freed immediately remembers that Colin has already challenged him in the succession race, and he understands that news of this victory will put him at a serious disadvantage. As soon as this thought settles in his mind, he looks at Daku and quietly starts forming a new plan in his mind. He walks over to Daku and says he was wondering why he hasn't been seen anywhere lately, which immediately makes the atmosphere tense. He asks why Daku is spending time with someone like Colin and implies it makes no sense. He goes on to say that a low-ranking servant entering the hunting grounds is considered a serious violation and asks if Daku wanted to taste things that were clearly forbidden to him. Daku stays silent, while Freed calls him a worthless man and adds that his sister Erika will be disappointed if she found out that he's already forgotten the lessons he was taught before. Colin steps forward and says he's still above that pampered brat who can't do anything without his mommy's support. Then he greets Freed sarcastically and calls him a failure. Sarah lets out a slight laugh, while Captain Glenn tells him to stay in line and not escalate the situation further. Freed gets angry at this insult, but Colin continues and explains that people don't bow because Freed is impressive. They do it because his mother is the Countess. The whole group goes into shock when Colin adds that it must feel great ordering others around with powerful parents as backup. Freed tries to intimidate him and claims he can have him killed without any effort. Colin calmly agrees, but says Freed can only do that when he goes to his mother and tells her to deal with the servant who's bothering him. Freed loses control and orders his men to seize him immediately, and chains appear. When assassins bind Colin according to the young lord's orders, an assassin puts a blade to his neck and everyone sees the situation turn dangerously tense. The royal guards recognize the assassins as the Empire's blades, an elite group of infiltrators used by the Williams family. Sarah says even nobles fear them because of their ruthless methods and unmatched skills, and she questions why the Countess trusts them for her son's safety. Before things get worse, Captain Glenn steps forward and tells Freed to drop this matter because both servants came to help with the investigation under the Lord's direct orders. Freed grits his teeth and asks if Glenn wants to oppose him too, but Colin cuts in and tells the captain not to worry about him. He tells him to report the investigation results to the family head. Syra immediately understands that Colin is letting them go because they can't take sides, so retreating is the only option. Glenn hesitates, then despite his anger, he falls back with the others. Freed looks at Colin and asks if he now understands how helpless he is when his life is in the young lord's hands. Colin says if that's his intention, then just kill him. But Fried says he has a better idea and slowly draws his sword. He calls Daku over and says every action has consequences. Then he throws the weapon in front of him. He tells Daku that if he picks up the sword and kills that servant, he can redeem himself, which leaves Daku completely stunned. Fried then promises that if he follows this order, he'll set Daku free. The story then flashes back to Colin's life before regression. Exactly 1 month after demons had descended on Earth, he's being beaten by mutant monsters that look like a mix of goblins and ogres. The monster lord has already captured him and mocks him as a pathetic savior. The demon lord gives him a sword and says if Colin kills his friend Daku, who was captured with him, he'll make a deal for the captured humans. Daku already looks at his limit and is barely holding himself together. The demon lord sits there enjoying the scene, satisfied that he's forced humanity's so-called hero to kill his own friend with his own hands. With no options left, Colin complies and picks up the sword. He advances toward Daku, who then starts talking and tells his story. He says the day his father died was also his sister Erika's birthday. Not long after, their mother dies from an unknown illness, and both of them, now orphaned, get captured and made into slaves. He goes on to explain that Marcus Darius eventually found and bought them, but their luck didn't fully turn because he still had to be separated from his sister, who was sent to the Williams family estate on Darius's second wife's orders. Daku then explains that since the demon race hasn't reached that estate yet, he asks Colin as his last wish to look after his sister because he believes she'll be safe there. He tells him his sister was always picky about food and finally tells Colin to let his sister know that her brother was a mighty knight so she can be happy knowing he fought for her till the end. Colin apologizes to his friend as he hears his last wish. The story returns to the present where both friends now stand in opposite roles. This time, Colin is bound in chains, while Daku is the one being forced to end his life. When Fried sees Daku hesitating, he questions why he hasn't properly followed his order yet. Daku then stands up for Colin and argues with the Lord's son that they shouldn't kill the person who just saved them from death's door. Fried plays dirty and brings up Erika again, saying how will she feel when she finds out her brother abandoned her for some random stranger. He adds more things about his sister to provoke him further. Fried explains that he recently heard from the Williams family butler that she's cutting back on her meals to buy a sword for her brother, and because of this, she fainted from hunger a week ago. Hearing this, Daku gets scared and immediately falls to his knees begging the young lord to save his sister. Fried, who has successfully manipulated him, tells him to kill Colin and in return, he'll do this. Hearing this, Colin starts laughing like crazy. When Fried asks why he's laughing, Colin mocks him, calling him a coward, lower than a dog, and provokes him saying he can never kill him. Instead, he proposes that the Lord let him and Daku fight to the death. Saying this will make things even more entertaining. Fried gets a bit worried because he can't figure out what Colin is planning. He wonders if Colin is afraid of the Empire's blades and accepts the proposal to see what happens and lets him go. Colin then stands before his best friend warming up, ready to fight. Looking at the sword pointing at him, Daku wonders if Colin is really serious and hesitates for a moment. But Fried brings up his sister again and forces him to take action. At this point, Colin has already started his attack and advances toward Daku with full force. Daku is shocked and falls hard backward. The MC immediately recovers and comes forward for another attack. But this time, Daku finally blocks his strike and repeatedly asks why he's doing all this and forcing him to counterattack. The MC apologizes as he answers and then insists that he doesn't want to become someone who dies. This finally pushes Daku into an attack stance and he forces the MC to jump back to create distance. The MC then warns his opponent that he'll finish him in just 3 moves. This attitude annoys Daku and he hesitantly says he doesn't even need 3 moves and he'll finish him in just 3 seconds. As the duel gets more intense, both charge at each other. But just as their swords are about to clash, the MC whispers that he'll never abandon his comrades. This triggers a memory from Daku's past and forces him to hesitate for a moment. Daku realizes this duel is just a distraction and decides to play along with his friend to create a commotion. This disturbance creates a clear opportunity which the MC takes advantage of, leaping forward to target Fried Hall. Fried though stops the sword at the last moment using his thunder magic. Seeing him fight, the MC mocks him that he finally showed some guts and resisted. When Mommy's boy hears this taunt, he gets angry and tells the MC not to underestimate him because he's fully capable of changing his own diapers. As the MC is pushed back, the Empire Blades get ready to attack him. But Fried stops them and yells for them to stay back. Now Fried is completely provoked and claims he'll finish the MC himself forever, so he doesn't want anyone interfering. He gathers lightning in his hand and gets ready to attack, which makes the MC a bit tense because his system detects a strong magic source. To understand what he's facing, Colin carefully analyzes Fried's stats. That man has zero magic resistance and his lightning magic is only mid-level. Still, the system warns Colin that he won't be able to properly withstand this at his level. Seeing this, the reckless daredevil gets excited with a wide grin. He wants to test himself whether this information is true or not. Summoning frozen ice in his palms, he directly clashes with Freed's raging purple lightning without any hesitation. Both elements collide violently and tear through everything in their path. When a thick cloud of dust forms between them, Freed thinks maybe his eyes are deceiving him. A lowly plebeian shouldn't even know how to use magic. Their first flashy exchange ends in a draw, or at least that's what it seems like. Suddenly, ice shards emerge from behind the dust, but he easily turns them into harmless water vapor. Confused and a bit troubled, he wonders where this ice is even coming from. Then our boy mockingly asks him casually where all the excitement of his amazing magic suddenly went. With a sharp gaze that shoots straight at Freed, he tells him exactly what he hates hearing the most. A failure. Everyone's eyes widen in shock when they see a commoner directly withstand a noble's magic attack. Daku doubts whether his own eyes are deceiving him. Meanwhile, the young master breaks into a sweat. A plebeian cast ice magic that was stronger than his own attack. He explains to himself that this must be some cheap trick. Summoning his most powerful thunder spell, the noble loudly says it's complete nonsense to believe that some lowborn can use real magic. Our hero quickly covers himself in a faint blue aura to survive the incoming powerful bolts. But suddenly, he gets a warning that his magic reserves are completely depleted. His defensive spell immediately fails. Mana exhaustion affects him badly and he can barely stay standing, using his sword as support. Slowly, he realizes he's completely fallen and there's no way out left. So gritting his teeth, he takes Freed's raging purple thunder head on. The noble doesn't back down at all and attacks with full intent to finish him off. His skin starts burning and Colin bitterly regrets that maybe he'll lose to that red-headed witch a second time too. He flatly refuses to let his second life also turn into that same tragic fate. Even without any mana, he forcibly casts magic. The magic book system shows a dangerous warning that using magic without mana will make him berserk. But Colin doesn't care at all. He'd rather go crazy, but not die drowning in regret. The color of his eyes slowly starts changing. Mysterious blue and black flames suddenly engulf half his body. Within seconds, half his body starts looking like those demons he killed in his past life. Even the magic book can't judge his real stats and shows unknown in every category. Feeling this strange and overwhelming power surging through his body, he himself doesn't know what to think. Suddenly, a sharp burning headache makes it difficult for him to focus and even breathe. Enduring the pain, the alert warrior notices that Freed doesn't have much stamina left either. With a clear magic-imbued slash, he cuts through all of the noble's lightning. Freed remains frozen in pure fear because he's never seen such dangerous magic in his life. He goes rigid when our boy suddenly leaps high into the air. As soon as he slams his sword hard into the ground, massive jagged chunks of ice violently burst upward, targeting Freed directly. The noble still believes his intermediate level thunder magic will easily destroy this ice, but he realizes too late that this was all just a calculated distraction so his opponent could quietly get behind him. Like a seasoned assassin, Colin comes from behind, while Freed is still busy stopping the ice shards. Freed's eyes shrink in terror and his life flashes before his eyes. In a last-ditch effort, he barely escapes death by making his favorite horse a meat shield. He lands unsteadily on feet that have never walked on grass. On the other side, our hero is still seemingly releasing infinite blue mana. Seeing his heavy breathing, the noble understands his enemy is on the edge of exhaustion. He casts Chidori Blade, gathering crackling lightning in his hand. Our boy easily cuts through those lightning bolts without any fear and says it's time to finish their reckless fight. When his sword stops a few inches from the young master's pale face, Freed realizes that this time, Mommy won't be able to save him. He jumps back and closes his eyes, thinking he's lived a good life. Then a glowing golden magic circle suddenly saves him from being skewered like Turkish delight. It deflects Colin's attack and throws it back at him, making him fall to the ground some distance away. Both boys are stunned when they see who saved Freed and who immediately tells them to stop. Lord Darius tells them that this isn't some crude gladiator arena. It's a noble hunting ground, so they should stop their worthless fight immediately. Sitting on his armored steed, he calmly suggests they have a proper and official duel after returning to the Grand House of Hell. Freed looks at his father with as much gratitude as hatred. Meanwhile, our hero silently watches with his glowing demon-like eyes. As soon as his unstable magic completely runs out, he falls to his knees and slowly returns to normal. Feeling his faint but strange magic aura, the Lord is truly shocked and worried. Colin understands that the danger has passed for now. That's why he finally lets loose and passes out right there. A few days pass when he fully comes to. Opening his eyes, he finds himself on a soft bed inside the Hall mansion. Suddenly, he feels that same burning sensation from the demonic magic time. He immediately gets up and checks himself, and fortunately, he's completely normal. No changes to his form. He quietly rejoices that he didn't turn into some hot demon. Then a familiar soft voice comes from nearby saying it's good that he's finally woken up. He looks to his right and sees Daku looking like a zombie, as if it wasn't him in a coma but Daku for 5 days. The poor guy quickly tells him everything, that he passed out and everyone was very worried. Syra slapped him repeatedly to bring him to consciousness and Captain Glenn carried him to the mansion. Syra was so worried she threatened the doctors that if they couldn't save him, they'd go in the same coffin. He finds all this hard to believe, but there's no doubt he's feeling better than before. To get some fresh air, he invites Daku to go for breakfast and wants to properly thank Syra. He also doesn't forget to honor Daku's secret bro code. With a light mischievous smile, he thanks his friend. Daku shows it's nothing, but he's pleasantly surprised that words like thank you even exist in Colin's vocabulary. Later in town, all the other servants start trembling when they see our hero passing by. He looks at them suspiciously, wondering if there's something weird on his face. He overhears some maids whispering about his intense fight with Freed. Quietly going up to them and suddenly jumping to scare them, he politely says they should tell him exactly what they've heard about him. The scared girls run away immediately without wasting a second. Daku can't understand why women are behaving like they've seen a ghost. Looking carefully at his friend's pale face, Sherlock guesses they're scared of his lifeless zombie look. Daku gets annoyed because of him, he stayed awake for 4 nights straight. Unhappy with Daku's attitude, he yells that he never asked him to be his personal nurse. Then, Lieutenant Hairloss arrives with his team and openly mocks the future Lord of House Hall. Annoyed by his untimely interference, both boys yell at that fool together that this isn't the right time. They somehow make him apologize for no reason too. After a moment of confusion, Lieutenant angrily says he's here today to take revenge for the humiliation he suffered a few days ago. Fed up with the old man's constant nonsense, our boy walks straight up to him while he's making excuses about his previous loss. This lieutenant truly believes that this time everything will be different and he'll finally teach this rude kid a lesson he'll never forget. He cracks his fingers and loudly calls his squad's name. Some weird seconds pass as he stands there expecting our boy to immediately fall. When he sees his men just standing there like confused ducklings, he furrows his brow and asks if they've suddenly gone deaf. For him, that snap was a clear signal to attack. His soldiers hesitate and remind him that their target is the same monster who fought Master Freed neck and neck. Daku lets out a light laugh. After seeing Colin fight up close, he's not surprised by their reaction. A vein of shame bulges on the lieutenant's forehead. Because his men don't have the guts, he decides to step forward himself to save his remaining dignity. Then his eyes land on his favorite pawn, who happens to be standing in exactly the right spot. He immediately grabs him by the collar, pulls him forward, and calls him a traitor dog who betrayed his master. Calling this a serious offense, the lieutenant takes it upon himself to punish him. The scummy man even looks happy at the thought of beating his helpless subordinate. But Daku calmly does something he didn't expect and stops his weak punch with one hand. The lieutenant's hand starts trembling and gets caught in Daku's strong grip. Daku clearly says this trash has no right to punish him. Then he casually throws Lieutenant Hairloss aside like some clingy ex who isn't ready to move on. The man is almost void from shock. Can't understand how his obedient puppy suddenly gathered the courage to challenge him. Hearing the heated argument, Captain Glenn arrives and asks why there's all this noise in the morning. Right after him, Marvin and Syra also come. Both are clearly annoyed that their breakfast got interrupted. The lieutenant laughs smugly. He's confident the royal guards will punish these troublemakers even worse than he would. The sycophant immediately bows before the guards and starts praising them. He quickly explains that he was just doing his duty and teaching manners to these rude kids who are standing behind him making faces. Our boy salutes Captain Glenn like everything's normal. The lieutenant can't believe it and is shocked that he's talking so casually to someone of higher rank. Then Marvin steps forward and slaps the lieutenant aside, saying he's just happy that Colin finally woke up. Seeing all this, the lieutenant's face turns completely blue with confusion. At this moment, he's watching the territory's most elite guards laughing and joking with that insolent brat like they're his best friends. For a moment, he convinces himself this is all just a fever dream. With no options left, he argues that it's unacceptable for elite guards to socialize with some low-ranking servant. Syra grabs his shoulder and clearly says that old hag Katrina's made-up laws don't mean anything to her. She also adds that his whining voice really irritates her, so he should shut up. Otherwise, he might need to wear another eye patch. After this gentle warning, our hero goes to have breakfast with the royal guards. He turns back and politely apologizes to Mr. Smirk for embarrassing him again. Then the scene shifts to a nearby bar where they're celebrating his recovery. Colin admits he already wanted to thank them and now he owes them another favor. Sayara shrugs and says she only helped because she can't stand that potato head. Captain Glenn reminds him that he also helped them a lot in the forest. Curious, Daku asks if she's known the lieutenant for a long time. Hearing this, she recalls that smooth-brained man and gets angry. To change the topic, Captain Glenn steers the conversation. He's wanted to discuss for a while that they now only have 3 elite knights left and he wants these 2 to join. Colin stays calm, but his friend almost goes crazy thinking that a substitute like him could become a royal guard. Glenn insists that this is a huge opportunity because it'll give them all the privileges of high-level servants. Our protagonist rejects the offer without wasting a second, says he has no interest in becoming a knight. He's got his eyes on something even bigger and he won't settle for anything less than his ambition. His words shock the whole party. Someone says he should drop foolish goals like becoming the Lord of Line. Just because he beat the young master doesn't mean he should get cocky. The drunk girl cuts in and says whatever Colin did was magic. She suddenly points at him and says he must have used some magic to beat the Azure King too. Our boy doesn't say anything. Lets things play out. While another man asks how can a former slave even touch magic? The old geezer jumps in and demands an explanation from him. Colin thinks that he knew these people would reach his secrets soon, now while everyone's staring at him. He's glad he prepared a cover story beforehand, like some serial gaslighter. All eyes lock on him. The girl is about to accuse him. Colin is scared of their reaction inside, but the girl's guess is that he's some former noble, which makes him unnecessarily terrified. He's still shocked while she's happily pleased with her own theory. She's so drunk, she even buys that he was some illegitimate child who ended up in slavery, and now his mission is to reclaim his lost mansion and regain his power. This is quite a reach, which makes her friend think, how can this crazy girl think this? Our boy just laughs. He just needs to go along with what she's saying so he can build a new story. Everyone thinks he's telling the truth, while Colin acts like he's about to cry, saying he was a former noble who lost his way and ended up in slavery. His emotional speech is so impactful that even those who doubted him start pitying him. While he swears he'll take back everything, everyone else falls for it. But his friend still believes such a simple lie can't fool Captain Glenn. Bro's expectations are completely shattered the very next moment, because the old geezer also buys that story and agrees to keep everything secret. Colin is completely chill with the captain, who just tells him to hide his powers in front of the madam or young master. Besides, he also informs him that the Marquis wants to meet Colin. With that, the scene ends, where our guy heads out to meet him. Glenn watches from afar and thinks about that so-called El City mentioned in Colin's cover story. On the way, Homeboy is still amazed at how smoothly that story worked in their favor. But even more than that, he can't understand why Colin chose El City specifically. Our boy answers that the city is a melting pot far from the territory, and it's hard to investigate there. This whole former noble angle is actually beneficial for him, so he can manipulate people later. Besides, dude bro wants to ask one more thing. Making a hook with his hand, he asks if Colin knows about the 3-legged crow, or if that was also some technique he made up on the spot to mislead people. Actually, when he saved Daku's life, Colin had cut off that fat monster's head in one strike and told him to deliver that message to his sister himself. After that, he started finishing off the other monsters too. But before reaching the boss, his sword stopped from the heavy vaporizing magic's effect. Colin froze in shock, while the monster taunts him asking how he could even think of beating it. Then Daku comes to the rescue, taking the perfect opportunity to suddenly attack without giving the monster a chance to react. Finally, both of them together take down that beast with a decisive double attack and then cut it into pieces like serving it on a sushi plate. After this, Daku gets really angry and cusses out our boy, saying he treated his will like a joke. Well, they couldn't argue much longer because immediately even more fat, ugly orc demons burst upon them. Daku cuts one down and yells at Colin that he pulled such a stupid stunt that could have cost the hostage her life. Our boy answers that cutting the hostage wouldn't have done anything either, because the monsters wouldn't have let her go anyway. Daku complains that Colin could have given some signal first, but our boy mocks him, saying revealing your strategy isn't a good idea. Their playful taunting continues and the others watch in confusion. Finally, the fight remains between those two people who were on the same side. Daku then makes his special 3-legged crow sign, which he probably thinks is really cool. He learned it from some guy named Rowan, which is a gesture showing cooperation between allies. Our boy struggles to make it, and while doing so, mocks Daku that he's trying to get captured like an idiot again. In the present, Colin explains that he knew this sign from before, because of an old friend whom he considered his best friend. Hearing this, Daku is a bit surprised and wonders if there really was such a person in the company. Then there's a knock at the door and both are finally called before the Marquis. The ruler is in a very good mood and asks Colin how he's feeling. Our boy happily answers that he's totally chill now. The Marquise greets Daku too, who gives his master full respect. Then the real talk begins because the Marquise called them for some reason. About the hunting grounds incident. The same incident they were fighting about that day. Using the grounds without permission was a terrible idea. The Marquise himself explains that he's had a connection with Glenn for a long time. Together, they faced death many times, coming this far while barely escaping close calls. That's why despite his position, the Marquis fears losing them and deeply respects these two young men for saving his friends. Daku also adds that they regret not being able to save more of their comrades, which was their own failure. But the Marquis absolves them of this blame, saying it wasn't their fault, but his own. That he couldn't anticipate the monster raid beforehand. Colin and his homeboy look at each other in confusion, while the Marquis adds that they've probably heard from Captain Glenn about the Royal Knights situation. Now that they're standing before him, he wants an answer from Colin once again, and as expected, this man rejects the offer with full confidence. Then the Marquis turns his attention to Daku and asks the same question, which shocks the guy because he's being given a personal offer to become a royal guard. Trembling with fear and panic, Bro says he's so inexperienced that even a guard position isn't worthy of him. A royal guard is out of the question. To help him, Colin tells him to speak from his heart. Focusing on this, he gathers his emotions and loudly declares his desire to become a royal guard. The decision is now clear, but the Marquis also wants to give Colin a reward of his choice. With so much freedom, he says something serious: the wish to free Erika, who is Daku's sister and currently a servant of the Williams family. This choice shocks even Daku himself, who hadn't expected this unexpected turn. Colin stands firm on his request, explaining that both siblings were with the Hall family together, but her body was considered too weak, while Daku always wanted her to stay with him. The Marquis asks again if this is his true wish. Colin admits he has a brotherly bond with Daku and he's without a doubt his best friend. That's why he doesn't want to leave him alone in such difficulty. The guy stands completely silent. He'd never expected such high praise. Our boy insists that Daku's sister be reunited with him. Such a bond of brotherhood between comrades reminds the Marquis of his own companions. But because this matter involves the Williams family, it won't be easy or quick. Immediately, the Marquis tells Daku to leave the room. He gets ready to go, but then starts thinking about Colin again, now that our boy is alone with the Marquis. He brings up another topic, reminding him of that day when he challenged Threst to a fight. At that time, the Marquis had already understood that he's no ordinary slave and was even more surprised when Colin survived a magical strike and then won the fight without any harm. The most shocking thing was that he showed that same power repeatedly. The Marquis also knows about the cover story Colin made up in front of Captain Glenn, where he talked about reclaiming nobility. Interestingly, Colin addresses the Marquis by his name and shows a slight glimpse of his magic powers, explaining that he's no great person but just an ordinary human with a slight affinity for magic. Now, because the man standing before him is the Marquis himself, a Grandmaster Archmage would only consider him an insignificant person. But that same Grandmaster Archmage is amazed that an ordinary human can manipulate magic. Once again, he's forced to think about who this man actually is. Colin insists that the person standing before him is someone who loves his people the most, the greatest Marquis, the same man who respects power more than bloodline. Colin is just happy he got acknowledgement, and his only purpose is to keep working for the Marquis so he can completely eliminate the concept of bloodline supremacy. In simple words, this man wants to become a powerful great lord himself, just like him, and ultimately has the daring ambition to surpass even him. Colin admits the Marquis saved his life twice. That's why he wants to show his true strength in the selection exam. After that, the ruler himself can decide how to use him as a weapon for his goals. This idea sounds entertaining, but it really makes the Marquis laugh out loud. Bro is truly impressed here and has high hopes for Colin. That's why he confirms his leave. Before going, he asks one last thing and wants to know his opinion about Rowan. Colin plays dumb, as if he doesn't know that name at all. So the Marquis tells him to leave without further explanation. Watching him leave, Darius Hall himself is surprised why he asked that question. He calls his butler, Cornell, who was casually doing Aurora forearming while hiding in the shadows. That steward is now curious whether the boy is ordinary or a genius. Judging by how he assessed Colin, he thinks he doesn't know about Rowan, which also means he's not from El City as he claimed, meaning it's a lie. So the butler doesn't trust him and thinks it could be some scheme because a similar incident has happened before, and it also seems like Marcus's own wife had deceived him first. Besides, the butler gives him a note saying he got information from Spirit Cat. Darius is intrigued and wonders what kind of information they got. In the next scene, our boy returns home and looks at the shiny things he's gathered, including materials, coins, and potions. All this was made possible by efficiently trading Colin's war spoils for supplies, and this time, the stuff he found will greatly increase his strength. At the same time, the name Rowan bothers him and he starts thinking, who is this man? He'd only heard this name when Daku mentioned it in his past life. Besides that, he knows nothing. The way the Marquise brought it up made it seem like Colin should have known him. Still, he drops that small bead into his tube, thinking he'll ask Daku about it later. After that, he mixes everything together to make a potion and drinks it. After drinking this liquid, Colin first chanced to open the magic book. This special artifact spreads numerous pages before him, and he keeps consuming more vials during this process. Dropping another one into the pile while experimenting, Colin focuses his energy and chants absorb, which immediately makes his muscles tense from pressure. The system confirms that mana has been absorbed, and his mana capacity has increased by 1 point. And truly, at this point, the system feels like the complete opposite of a solo leveling system. Colin thinks that mixing Flame Monster cores with Jade Sovereign Grass could increase his mana capacity. At least that's the information he got from the book. But such a potion can give him at most 3 points, while some give none at all. Still, Colin is afraid that if his mana runs out, he'll lose control again. That's why he wants to increase his magic resistance first. At the same time, he can't stop himself from thinking how disgusting this all tastes. He's already feeling nauseous, and drinking them one by one will take way too much time. Pro is afraid he might die of diarrhea before improving, so he wonders if there's an easier way. Then, while looking at his mana capacity, he gets a notification from the system detecting a powerful monster core. Actually, this core can be turned into a magic artifact that will help him. This idea is interesting. He picks up the blue core and investigates further. Tapping on the system screen, he configures the settings and casts the monster's altar in a golden aura through meditation. According to the magic book's instructions, he channels his power into the mana core and creates an image of the artifact in his mind. He thinks about what he should craft. Quickly deciding, he presses a crystal ball into his hand and materializes a magic artifact with the blue core. The crafting process is quite extraordinary, and finally, the golden shimmers fade. The system confirms the artifact has been successfully created, which is a bracelet on his left arm. This is the Azure bracelet with a special effect that gives the user wild intuition. It also has a blessing that increases his mana capacity by 1 point when worn. To test it, he drinks another vial, and this time his capacity increases by 2 points. Meaning now, ordinary potions that used to give him 1 point also give 2 points because of this bracelet. This is an incredible object, but what makes him most curious is its main ability, wild intuition. Then his senses suddenly sharpen and he feels something on the other side of the door. Colin can sense 2 people. They're both maids, but bro is so shocked that he screams out loud. It feels like he suddenly got X-ray vision. Or rather, life force vision. Even when looking at guards, the world appears to him in different color gradients. After this, he checks Marcus and Katrina too, where their flames show their mana. Amidst all this, Colin hears a faint but clear voice saying that she's restlessly hungry. That's it for today's video. Tell me, should I make part 2 or not? And don't forget to like and subscribe.